In a small rural community, where time seemed to have its own cadence, a woman named Olivia lived her days with serenity. At 70 years old, Olivia was a respected and beloved figure by all. Her wooden cabin, built decades ago, was situated on the edge of a dense and mysterious forest, a place she knew well and for which she held deep respect. Widowed for many years, Olivia found joy in the little things: tending to her garden, listening to the birds sing, and above all, spending time with her great-grandson, Matthew. Matthew, an 8-year-old boy, was the light of Olivia's life. With his boundless curiosity and contagious energy, he turned every visit to his great-grandmother's house into an adventure. Olivia loved sharing with him the ancient stories of the forest, teaching him about the plants, the animals, and the secrets that the centuries-old trees held. The bond between them was deep, built on love, wisdom, and the many afternoons they spent together exploring the surroundings. One of those afternoons, with autumn painting the leaves in golden hues, Olivia and Matthew decided to walk along a trail that wound through the forest. It was a path Olivia had walked for years, and she knew every curve, every stone, every tree that stood out on the horizon. But despite the familiar surroundings, there was something in the air that made Olivia feel uneasy. Perhaps it was the way the wind blew through the trees or the unusual silence that enveloped them, but something told her that this walk would be different. As they walked, Olivia told Matthew about the legends of the forest, stories of creatures that lived deep within the trees and spirits that protected those who respected nature. Matthew listened attentively, his eyes shining with the fascination of someone discovering a new world with every word. He didn't know it yet, but those stories would soon become more than just tales and would become part of his own experience. After a peaceful walk, they reached a point on the trail where the forest thickened and sunlight barely penetrated the tree canopy. It was there that, suddenly, two figures emerged from the shadows, interrupting their stroll. Two men, with grim expressions and worn-out clothes, appeared before Olivia and Matthew, their intentions clearly threatening. Olivia's heart raced, but she knew she had to stay calm, especially for Matthew, who was now looking at her with fear in his eyes. The men, without any compassion, demanded that Olivia hand over everything she had. Their firm and threatening voices contrasted with Olivia's frailty, who, trying to protect her great-grandson, offered her bag without hesitation. But the gesture wasn't enough. One of the men, in an act of gratuitous cruelty, pushed Olivia, causing her to fall to the ground. Matthew screamed, terrified, not understanding why something so horrible was happening. As Olivia tried to regain her composure, a deep, resonant sound echoed through the forest, like distant thunder. The sound made the assailants pause for a moment, looking around, but they ignored nature's warning. They were determined to finish what they started. However, the forest had its own plans. Without warning, the situation took an unexpected turn. What followed would be remembered by Olivia and Matthew for the rest of their lives, not just as a frightening encounter, but as the beginning of something truly extraordinary. The forest, with its mysteries and its guardians, was about to reveal a face that few had the privilege of knowing. The tranquility that Olivia and Matthew had always found in the forest was now completely shattered. The push that knocked Olivia to the ground brought more than just physical pain. It brought back memories she had buried many years ago, memories of a past marked by violence. When she was young, Olivia had witnessed something terrible, a robbery that ended tragically. That experience left a deep mark on her, leaving invisible scars that she carried throughout her life. Now, seeing Matthew so vulnerable, the memories of that dark day came rushing back, bringing with them the paralyzing fear she knew so well. As Olivia struggled to get up, her mind was in turmoil. She couldn't allow her great-grandson to go through the same pain she had felt so many years ago. The fear of reliving that tragedy made her heart race, but it also ignited a flame of determination within her. She needed to protect Matthew at all costs. But how? The difference in strength between them and the attackers was overwhelming, and Olivia knew that kind words would not be enough to ward off the danger this time. Matthew, for his part, was in shock. The boy, always full of life and energy, now found himself helpless in the face of the world's brutality. He had never witnessed anything like this, and seeing his great-grandmother on the ground filled him with a fear he had never experienced before. The stories about the dangers of the forest that he had heard so many times from Olivia now seemed more real than ever, and the safety he always felt by her side dissolved in an instant. The men who attacked them were not simple thieves. They were desperate men, with eyes that revealed a despair that went beyond the material. On the run and with no direction, these individuals had lost everything, and their desperation made them dangerous. To them, this robbery was not just about money, it was about survival, and that made them even more threatening. They did not see Olivia and Matthew as people, but as obstacles in their path. The situation was dire, and the growing fear in Olivia and Matthew's hearts only intensified as the men became more impatient. They weren't just after valuables. They were willing to do whatever it took to ensure they wouldn't be recognized or reported. This put Olivia in a state of high alert, her mind racing for a solution, while the shadow of her past became increasingly oppressive. As all of this was unfolding, the forest around them seemed to breathe along with them, every sound amplified by the tense silence that hung in the air. Olivia felt a deep connection to that place, as if the trees and the wind were witnessing what was happening. And it was in this silent communion with nature that she felt something change, as if an ancient force was awakening from the depths of the earth. The tension between the characters was on the brink of exploding. Olivia knew she couldn't let fear take over, not this time. The look in Matthew's eyes, full of confusion and terror, was what pushed her into action. But as she gathered the strength to get up and face the men, something in the environment began to shift. The air seemed to grow denser, and a deep, almost imperceptible sound at first began to reverberate through the forest. It was as if nature itself was preparing to intervene. As Olivia tried to rise from the ground, feeling the throbbing pain in her leg, something inside her awakened. As much as fear consumed her, the instinct to protect her great-grandson was even stronger. She knew she couldn't allow the trauma of the past to paralyze her. Olivia made a decision in a matter of seconds. She would not succumb to the terror that these men were trying to impose. As the robbers approached, still impatient and aggressive, Olivia did something unexpected. With a quick movement, she grabbed a stone lying nearby and threw it with all the strength she could muster, hitting the nearest man on the shoulder. It wasn't the most powerful blow, but it was enough to distract him and make him recoil for a moment, surprised by the unexpected resistance from a woman he had deemed defenseless. The second man, furious at Olivia's reaction, advanced, but before he could do anything, Matthew, inspired by his great-grandmother's courage, did something equally unexpected. With his eyes shining with fear and determination, he grabbed a fallen branch from the ground and ran towards the man, trying to scare him off with shouts of childish bravery. The robber, caught off guard by the boy's boldness, hesitated for a second, which proved crucial. That brief moment of hesitation was the decisive moment the forest seemed to be waiting for. The deep sound that had previously echoed discreetly now intensified, becoming a powerful and deep growl that seemed to emanate from the very bowels of the earth. Everyone, including the robbers, stopped and looked around, confused and apprehensive. What happened next completely changed the course of events. From the midst of the trees, like an imposing shadow, a large black bear emerged, its muscles tense and its eyes fixed on the intruders. The presence of the bear was overwhelming, and for a moment, no one moved. The robbers, who until then felt in control of the situation, were overcome by a primal fear, the kind that humans feel when confronted by something much bigger and more dangerous than themselves. Olivia, upon seeing the bear, did not feel fear, but rather a strange sense of security. It was as if the forest, which had always been her ally, had sent its fiercest protector in a moment of extreme need. She knew she couldn't predict what the bear would do, but she trusted her instinct that this animal was not a threat to her and Matthew. The robbers, on the other hand, began to slowly retreat, trying not to provoke the bear. The first man, still clutching his injured shoulder, took a few steps back, while the second, still with his eyes fixed on Matthew, seemed to be in a dilemma about whether to continue or flee. The bear, however, didn't give them much time to think. With an even more threatening growl, it took a step forward, making it clear that any aggressive movement would have serious consequences. It was at that moment that the real turning point occurred. The man who had been injured by Olivia signaled to his accomplice, and together, the two began to run, quickly disappearing into the forest, driven by pure terror. They had underestimated the power of nature and the determination of a grandmother protecting her great-grandson. When silence returned to the forest, the bear remained for a few moments, watching Olivia and Matthew. Olivia, still holding Matthew's hand firmly, did not take her eyes off the bear, but there was no fear in her gaze, only gratitude. The bear, as if understanding what had just happened, turned around and disappeared back into the forest as silently as it had appeared. With the robbers gone and the immediate danger past, Olivia felt the tension in her body begin to ease. She knew that moment had been decisive, not just for the physical safety they had regained, but for the internal transformation that both she and Matthew had experienced. Olivia had confronted her deepest fears, and Matthew, despite his young age, had learned a valuable lesson about courage and resilience. That day in the forest would forever mark their lives, not just as the day they faced danger, but as the day they discovered the hidden strength that resides within each of us, ready to emerge when the situation demands it. The moments of tension in the forest were behind them, but the effects of what Olivia and Matthew had experienced would continue to shape their lives in profound and unexpected ways. When they finally arrived home, still shaken by what had occurred, Olivia felt a mix of relief and a renewed sense of responsibility. She realized that what had happened was not just a coincidence or an isolated act of nature. It was something much greater, something she had always believed in but had now witnessed firsthand. That night, while Matthew slept soundly after the scare, Olivia sat alone in the living room, surrounded by her old books. She pulled a specific volume from the shelf, an old, dusty book that had belonged to her grandmother. The pages were yellowed with age, but the stories within it remained vivid in her memory. The book spoke of legends and ancestral spirits that inhabited the forest, protectors of the innocent and guardians of nature's secrets. Among these legends, there was one that had always captured her imagination since childhood. The spirit of the bear, a powerful entity that, according to the ancients, appeared only in moments of extreme need to protect those who respected the land and lived in harmony with it. For years, Olivia had believed that these stories were just part of folklore, something to enchant and teach younger generations about respect for nature. However, what she and Matthew had experienced in the forest made her reconsider everything. Perhaps the legends were not just myths. Perhaps the spirit of the bear was real, and the forest truly held a wisdom and protection that only the most sensitive could perceive. In the days that followed, Olivia began to share these stories with Matthew in a new way, no longer as fairy tales, but as real lessons about the world around him. She told him about the spirit of the bear and how the ancients believed it to be a protector, appearing only to those who were worthy of its help. Matthew, now with a new perspective on life in the forest, listened with attention and respect, understanding that what he had seen was not just an animal, but something far more significant. This experience changed Matthew deeply. Before, he saw the forest merely as a place to play and explore. Now, he viewed it with a renewed reverence, understanding that it was a sacred place, full of mysteries and invisible forces that deserved respect. He began to spend more time with Olivia, not just to hear her stories, but to learn about the plants, the animals, and the ancient traditions that had been passed down through generations. Olivia, in turn, found new energy and purpose in passing on this knowledge, seeing in Matthew not just a great-grandson, but an attentive student and an heir to the ancient wisdom. As time passed, life in the small rural community returned to normal, but with a subtle difference. The stories about what happened to Olivia and Matthew spread, and although many doubted the truth of the events, others began to look at the forest with new eyes. The idea that nature could be more than just trees and animals began to take root in people's consciousness. And for Olivia and Matthew, the bond between them grew even stronger, built on a foundation of mutual respect and the understanding that they were connected to something much greater than themselves. Olivia, now more than ever, dedicated herself to teaching Matthew everything she knew. They continued their walks in the forest, but now with a new purpose. Every plant, every animal, every sound they heard was an opportunity for learning, and Matthew absorbed every bit of information with enthusiasm. He knew he was being prepared, not just to respect nature, but to eventually assume the role of guardian of this knowledge, just as Olivia had done. The greatest lesson Matthew learned from this experience was the importance of listening to and respecting the signs of nature. He understood that the forest was not just a backdrop for his adventures, but a living being, with its own rules and secrets. And above all, he learned that courage and determination can emerge in the most unexpected moments, and that true strength often comes from sources we cannot see but feel in our hearts. For Olivia, the experience brought an unexpected closure to the traumas of her past. Facing that moment of danger and seeing the spirit of the bear emerge to protect her family gave her the peace she had sought for so many years. She realized that, although the world can be full of dangers, it is also full of protective and benevolent forces, ready to intervene when needed. And so, she dedicated herself to ensuring that Matthew and future generations would never forget this lesson. The story of Olivia and Matthew reminds us that, amidst the adversities of life, there are always invisible forces that guide and protect us, even when we least expect it. The experience they had in the forest was much more than a simple encounter with danger. It was a profound lesson about the importance of trusting instincts, respecting nature, and believing that, even in the darkest moments, there is a light that can guide us to safety. Olivia, a woman who had faced so many challenges throughout her life, found a new reason to move forward by passing on her knowledge and wisdom to Matthew. She understood that the power of the stories her grandmother told her was not just in the words, but in the lessons they contained and in how those lessons shaped her view of the world. And now, it was her turn to pass on this heritage, to ensure that future generations not only remembered the legends but lived according to the values they taught. For Matthew, the experience in the forest was a milestone in his maturity. He learned that courage does not mean the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. He understood that true strength does not reside only in muscles, but in the will to protect those we love and in the ability to believe in something greater than ourselves. The presence of the spirit of the bear, something he initially saw as just a story from his great-grandmother, became a tangible reality that reinforced his faith in the unexplained, the mysterious, and the spiritual. This story teaches us that, just like Olivia and Matthew, we all face challenges and moments of darkness throughout life. We may find ourselves in situations where everything seems to be against us, where fear and uncertainty paralyze us. But it is in these moments that we need to remember that courage and faith are our greatest allies. The courage to act even when the path seems uncertain, and the faith that we are not alone, that there are forces around us, visible or invisible, ready to support us. Often, the greatest lessons in life do not come from books or the words of others, but from the experiences we live and the trials we face. Olivia and Matthew's journey shows us that when we face our fears and believe in the power of nature and the inherent goodness of the universe, we can overcome even the most difficult challenges. The spirit of the bear is a powerful symbol of this truth, a reminder that nature is wise and protective and that when we respect and listen to it, it responds in surprising ways. Thus, as we reflect on this story, we are invited to consider how we can apply these lessons in our own lives. We may not face bears in the forest or threatening thieves, but we all face our own challenges and fears. And, like Olivia and Matthew, we have a choice in how we respond to these situations. We can allow fear to paralyze us, or we can choose to act with courage and confidence, knowing that life has a way of guiding us through the most difficult moments. This story also reminds us of the importance of preserving and passing on ancient traditions and knowledge. The stories that Olivia learned from her grandmother and now teaches to Matthew are more than just tales. They are a living connection to the past, a way to keep the wisdom accumulated over generations alive. In a world that changes so quickly, where modernity often tries to replace the old, it is vital that we maintain this connection to our roots, respecting what came before us and passing these lessons forward. In the end, Olivia and Matthew's lives were forever changed that afternoon in the forest, but the impact was much more than just a matter of physical safety. They were transformed by an experience that touched their souls, an experience that taught them about courage, faith, and the deep connection between humans and nature. And this transformation is something we can all achieve if we allow the experiences of our lives to shape us, teach us, and guide us toward a wiser and more connected future. So, as we conclude this story, take with you the message that faith, courage, and respect for nature are essential to overcoming the challenges we face. And remember, no matter how dark the journey may seem, there is always a light, a force, a spirit of the bear ready to guide us, as long as we are willing to believe and act with an open heart.